On average, we're paying about $5,800 a year. That includes driving to New York for tournaments. That includes driving to Richmond for tournaments. That's included going to Florida for a President's Cup type thing, hotel, and the like. This is a heck of a profit margin. A lot of those costs aren't even associated with being with the club. These costs are a barrier. If you talk about growing the sport, you can't grow the sport if you have this country club mentality. The black girls, they're put on defense. This is at a very young age. To say this kid is fast and athletic, and that's why she's on defense, in essence, what they're saying is, you're too dumb to play offense.
This is the Fred Opie Show, where we share lacrosse stories and life lessons from coaches, players, parents, and experts. I'm your host, Fred Opie, a former Syracuse University and U.S. national team player. Today on the Fred Opie Show, cultural sensitivity and questioning some of the things that are happening in the game of lacrosse. This is the fastest game on 2 feet and the fastest growing sport in America. Referring back to the famous Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court case, the growth of our game is often separate and unequal. We talk about that today with a question that comes from a parent. That's today on the Fred Opie Show. So we have Bernie calling. Bernie, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Washington, D.C. My question is, it centers around my daughter, a cross player. Problems are, for example, at these summer tournaments, you play 6 games a day in the swelter and heat between games. You're with your teammates in the tent. You get asked about your hair. You get asked, do you run fast because you're black? I appreciate what you're doing and a lot of the speakers that have come on here, but I've also hipped some, other parents similarly situated to myself about the podcast, and they've been listening. And, in the collective sense, we've been talking about our issues, how distinctly different they are from a lot of the issues that are covered. I mean, we're getting a little Jimmy the Greek-esque here.
For some of the younger listeners, he's referring to the sports analyst Jimmy the Greek. The Bible says out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and he spoke something that he felt about black folks, that essentially we were genetically produced during slavery to excel, and aired that on national TV, and that was the end of his broadcasting career. So you're talking about young ladies that your daughter's interacting with, and she's hearing these kind of comments.
Kids are unfiltered. They're going to say, and oftentimes they say what they've heard. The black girls they're put on defense. This is at a very young age. One parent who's more boisterous than I am asked, why is this one on defense? Oh, well, she's very fast and athletic. To say this kid is fast and athletic, and that's why she's on defense, to me is the adult version, which is akin to what the innocent young lady asked the girl, do you run fast because you're black? But on an adult level, it's the same thing. In essence, what they're saying is, you're too dumb to play offense. The kids are taken, and at a young age, they're pigeonholed. You keep hearing this talk about going the game, right? You can't watch a game on ESPNU without the folks telling you how much the game is growing. It's not growing for everybody. If you talk about growing the sport, you can't grow the sport if you have this country club mentality where these costs are a barrier. How can I help her?
Many folks outside the African-American community, some of the things we're saying to you may be eye-opening, and I'm glad it is. But my daughter was telling me about a girl who walked up and just started touching my daughter's hair without asking, just talking, as though my daughter her hair is a mannequin in a store, and she has the right to go and investigate without any permission whatsoever. Another time, I literally was at one of my daughter's practices at the camp and saw a girl go up and proceed to ask a question. This also came up with my wife. My wife just came back from Europe. She's a grown woman. She came back from Europe. She was in Italy, and she talked about people who attempted to do the same thing, touch her hair, to investigate her hair. One thing I did, one thing my wife did, I think is a good strategy for your daughter and other African-American girls who run into this, particularly in the sport of lacrosse. But this is life. This will happen in the societies that we live because people are ignorant. Ignorant being unaware of what's appropriate. We're talking about social IQ 101 that folks outside of our community need to understand when you're interacting with us. So number one, when the girl went up to touch my daughter's hair and I was in the presence, I said to the young girl, it's going to cost you to touch her hair. But since we like you, we will lower the cost of touching her hair. So I made it a little bit humorous for the girl. But the message being is you don't have the right to come touch somebody's hair without permission. That was my message to her in a jovial way. So one way you can deal with it is humor that will catch people's attention. And I would point to the comedian Dick Gregory, activist comedian, who you can see on YouTube. The man is both hilarious and penetrating. He will get you laughing and then shoot a message to you that will cause you to stagger as though you got tackled by Lawrence Taylor. And it has an effective way. And when you're staggering back at what he just said to rock your world, he will make you laugh again. And then he will cause you to stagger again. So that's one way to deal with this when you're dealing with the comments about hair or speed. Secondly, my wife had a great strategy that I'd never heard her express until we were talking about this on her way back from the airport after being in Europe for the last 3 weeks. She said that when people reach to touch her hair, she reaches and touches underneath their chin, which is a very uncomfortable feeling for anybody to touch under your chin. And she says people recoil back when she does that. And she looks at them and says, that's exactly how you should feel when you touch my hair. You should be recoiling back instead of thinking you have the right to do so. So that's two strategies: humor, and then go to touch their chin when they go to do it. And they'll probably recoil back like, what are you doing? And your response, daughter, should be, what are you doing trying to touch my hair? Role play with them. Put them through the scenarios and role play. If you look at the Starbucks company, they have a training program where they train their employees to deal with trouble at the counter when people are ordering. And so they role play them through different situations. I would also point you back, as you know, I'm an historian, to the civil rights movement when African Americans were integrating lunch counters. Many people don't know this, but before they went to the lunch counters and actually carried out the protest of sit-ins to demand that the lunch counters be desegregated, they went through hours, days, and weeks of training, knowing that people would not accept necessarily what they're doing, respond violently, but they role played these situations of what would happen when they went to desegregate the lunch counters. And in many ways, listen to me carefully, listeners, what Bernie and I are talking about is desegregating the sport of lacrosse. We are entering spaces that traditionally haven't had us there. And so in many ways, it's a lunch counter-like encounter. And so preparing our child to deal with these things. And if you are one of the parents of some of the other players from the majority community, you need to talk to your children about this play the podcast for them, listen to Bernie's comments, listen to the scenarios that his children have had to deal with, and discuss them. You can't improve situations unless you talk to them. So I would say role play. I would also say the comment about speed is a similar situation, role play. And what are some responses? Well, I would say to people who have these stereotypes, are you fast because I'm black? Then I would say, really, in what way, shape, or form could that be an accurate statement? No more than the stereotypes that people have about, black folks playing sports like golf or tennis and the assumption of all black folks can play basketball. These are assumptions, they're stereotypes, and they need to be challenged. To coaches that are listening to me, that you are coaching club team, youth team, I am a coach of my daughter's 6th grade team. And in many ways, I have to engage the girls in conversations and use them as teachable moments. It can be exhausting, parents that are out there, whether the child is one of the few Asians on the team or the few whatever, Native American on the team. It can be exhausting trying to deal with folks who don't have a social IQ and know how to interact with us. If you think you actually are progressive and care about positive change, then you need to talk to your teams about the stuff that's going on. I would also point to Don McPherson. There's a podcast with him who is his entire career. He's a guy who played football at Syracuse during the time and also in NFL during a time when NFL weren't taking black quarterbacks all the time. And I think this is a great segue into the question of pigeonholing.
Why is it I have never seen a black girl exclusively on attack? They're defenders for the most part, some midfielders, but my daughter has no one to look to that plays offense, that plays no attack. As young age goes to practice and told she's put on defense because of her quote-unquote athleticism.
Any youth coach worth their weight, you want the children to play every position. And if it's a club team and you're playing, I think you need to find out before you sign up for a team, what is the policy? Because the child at a young age needs to play every position. And I'll give people an example, is that as a high school player, I was an attackman. I played all over the field just to make sure our team could be competitive. So when we played Yorktown, which is one of the top teams in New York State, I would play defense. I would play man down. I would play man up. And I actually did that at the junior college I went to at Herkimer County Community College. So here it is, I'm on the man up team and then play defense. I'm also thinking of another gentleman that I've interviewed, and there's a video on him. His name is Jose Oliverio. I need to interview Jose about this too. Jose was an All-American at West Point, and I grew up watching Jose play, and Jose also took the faceoffs. So the man took the faceoff, won the faceoff, got the ball down offense, then jumped back in the goal. But my point is that kids need to be exposed to every aspect of the game. They should not be specializing at that age. Most coaches will tell you is you want your best athlete in the goal. And a lot of people don't necessarily think about that, but that really should be the case. But everybody needs to have experience playing all positions. If you have kids specializing in any sport too early, it is not good. Let me speak to the coaches on this and say, Coach, it's called subconscious bias. And I don't care if you're black, blue, or whatever, you are subject to subconscious bias. So what do I mean by subconscious bias? That we have been programmed into thinking that certain people, certain genders should be restricted to certain positions and certain opportunities. And until you investigate, until you dig into your own subconscious bias, you will be carrying out the biases that exist in this country, and you will favor, privilege one group, phenotype, gender over the other. And I'll give you an example as a college professor. Because I am aware of this, when I am teaching my courses, I systematically require myself to call when it comes time for a question and answer or discussion question with my students, and they have to raise their hand to have an opportunity to speak. I intentionally require myself to go male, female, male, female, male, female, or female, male, female, male. Because if I don't, my subconscious bias will have the men in the class, the young men, dominating the conversation. So I think coaches need to be called out on this. I think they need to be held accountable. And I hope coaches that are listening to me hear what Bernie has said. There is going around from his experience. And Bernie, how long has your daughter been playing at the club level?
Since the third grade and the 11th grade now.
Dozens and dozens of summer tournaments, winter tournaments, fall tournaments. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
His child's been playing since third grade. She's in 11th grade. She's committed to go play at a Division I program.
Throughout this entire time, I've seen one other black girl who plays attack. Just fairly recently, we've seen black girls start to be able to shoot the ball. Taylor Thornton at Northwestern, who started as a defender, then she's moved to midfield, and then when she gets on the 8, she will shoot the ball. Yeah. You know, there's a girl at USC, midfielder from Georgia. She's a midfielder. She gets to shoot the ball at SC. Uh-huh. But by and large, for the most part, I'd say over 99% of the black girls we've seen play are defenders.
I hope people are listening carefully to this. Challenge the coaches to allow your child to play all over the field. Ask them. It's taking a stern and firm stance and saying to those in authority, coaches, program directors, and saying, have you not noticed that there are no African Americans or hardly any playing the offensive position? And tell me why. If you're the fastest, most athletic, then You should be playing a skill position. Because we heard the same nonsense about African Americans in the NFL playing quarterback. The same nonsense is one of the reasons why you don't have that many African Americans as head coaches. This stuff has been going on and on, and we need to put a stop in it. Why can't we as a sport be a leader? Just like we know in the military has done a better job than any other institution in ending segregation and some of these nonsense biases because they've been intentional. Why not as a sport? Since we are the fastest growing sport in the United States, why won't we be more intentional than any other sport in breaking down barriers to opportunities?
She has to learn how to advocate for herself. Mm-hmm. I tell her, you go talk to the people. I'm not going to talk to them. You talk to them. You come back to me and let me know how the conversation went, how you feel about it, and then subsequent to the season, we'll make decisions. We went to another club. My job is to raise this youngster, not to educate ignorant people. But here you have a coach telling a kid that had during their 4.0 grade point average that you don't grasp the offense.
What we're talking about is, number one, subconscious bias. Number two, idiot parents and idiot players who make it more difficult when you're going in with the correct mindset. I agree with you. I think it's admirable that you are teaching your child how to advocate. It's one of those things that with my 14, 11-year-old, I'm constantly have to do, and the sooner they learn it, the better. You are the fish swimming upstream because of the other two idiot factors that we talked about: subconscious bias, entitled children, and the number three, parents who are just helicopter parents on steroids. It does make it difficult, but nonetheless, I think we both agree that we have to teach our children how to negotiate the world that's in front of them right now. You have to fight. As Frederick Douglass said, as a young man came to him and said, "Mr. Douglass, how can I help my people?" And he stopped and he looked at that young man and he said, "Agitate, agitate, agitate." And then he turned around and he walked back in the house. That's what we're saying, folks out there. We have to agitate. Sometimes, I tell my kids, some of the struggles that I engage in are struggles for justice, not for my kids, not for me, not for my wife, but for the families and the people who are come after me, that I got to have a cause, as Joe Ehrman says in his book, Inside Coaching. You got to have a cause that's greater than yourself. And if you dedicate yourself to that cause that's greater than you, in the long run, it's going to make you a better person and the world around you better. The show will be right back. For related content on negotiating the world of school and sports, visit our website at fredopie.com. Check out our podcast archive and review the show on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. The best way to support the podcast is to tell a friend, share the show on Facebook and Twitter, or send them to our website at fredopie.com. During the first half of the show, we referred to an interview done with Don McPherson. Let's hear a clip from that show.
And I understood, the deep-seated racism that existed in our country, but at the same time, as a football player, I was given a pass. It was okay with me as a black man as long as I was playing the game. Those things were visible to me as a kid, especially here on Long Island. Long Island is one of the most segregated areas in the country. We, by neighborhood, we are segregated by every demographic. So I was very familiar with sort of how racism and sexism and anti-Semitism functions in our society, and I watched it and I experienced it as a kid in a very visceral way. It was all the things around the game that were, increasingly distasteful. And I was fortunate that while I was in college, before the draft in 1988, I sent a letter to all 28 general managers in the NFL telling them not to draft me if they weren't going to play me a quarterback. So yeah, there was always a social justice sort of bent to how I looked at my role as a quarterback of the football team.
That was Don McPherson. To hear his interview in its entirety, go to our show page at fredopie.com and look for the link to the podcast. Now, back to the show. We talk about the economics of lacrosse, the ROI, the return on investment for those of us who have children who love the game of lacrosse, and if they want to get to the next level, feel the necessity to put that child in a club program. Let's deal with the last question of access and cost, just in the time that we have left. I'm hearing you say, let me just make sure I have the figures right, that you have found that on average, let's round off the number to 6K. It's a 6K investment for your child to play club lacrosse. And that does include a set number of tournament fees that are covered from that, or is that separate? It's 6K plus fees for playing in a set number of tournaments. Educate me on that.
Average of six figures was predicated on speaking to roughly 5 families from 5 different organizations. The club fees do encompass tournament fees, but what is not included in there is the travel, say to Naples, Florida, to Richmond, Virginia, state New York, Pennsylvania, to play in the 6 or so tournaments in the summer, to play in the 3 or 4 in the fall, to go to Pennsylvania to play in the indoor championships in the winter. So you have a year-round sport, and you're paying on average about $6,000, not covering travel, food, and lodging.
Per tournament, can you give me a ballpark about what that cost?
The rooms, you're there for 3 nights, and on average, about $150 a night. The kids, they're athletes, so they eat like there's no tomorrow. A couple $100 just in food, and then travel of getting there, fuel. And a lot of these tournaments will begin on a Friday, which means folks like me, I miss Thursday and Friday at work.
Okay, so we got $1K for the flight. We got $450 for the hotel. Food for the week, probably $500.
Easily, yeah.
You're talking $2,000 a tournament on average.
Yes.
And you said you're missing a day of work.
Not only that, but if you live where we live, the public schools don't play, so I'm paying for this kid to go to school.
What is the tuition at the private school your daughter goes to per year?
It's $18,000 a year.
Your daughter has been committed long before she got to high school.
Correct.
She really doesn't need to play in any of these tournaments that are costing you roughly $2,000. And she probably plays in, 3 of them per year?
More than 3. They played 6 this past.
If you look at the amount of money you are paying for all this, it is a better investment to take 6 times 2,000, all right? So 6 tournaments, 2,000, to put the money in a mutual fund that with diversified stocks that have and you can do it because I do it. I have both my kids have a 529, which is a tax-free investment for college. Average for those mutual funds that they're earning is above 8%, almost 10%. It's a better investment for a whole lot less money. So why not invest in mutual funds? Why not invest in ACC test preps, SAT prep? Because if your kid gets those high SAT or ACT scores, I work at a college that we give full academic scholarships to kids who have great grades. And there are, even at some of the top flight schools in the country that play lacrosse, there are 10 to 15 times more academic scholarships at those institutions for children who qualify than they are for kids who qualify for lacrosse and have to pay all this investment. Having your child prepared academically and athletically to succeed at the next level. Why not limit your child to tournaments that are 2-hour radius from the home? Therefore, you don't have to pay for the flight. You don't have to pay for the hotel. You just got to pay for the lodging. That's number 1. Number 2, why not invest in individual coaching trainers for your kid? For example, I haven't done this as a business model, but I certainly could prepare. I have no lack of confidence that I could take your child or another child and train that child to succeed at the next level. And I'd probably charge $200, $300 an hour to train your child 3 times a week. Because one of the things look, most people will tell you, Division I coaches, Division III coaches that I talk to, they will tell you, the problem with club ball right now is most of the kids are not getting good coaching. They're just running up and down the field. They're not learning how to play great defense. Why not invest in somebody at my coaching level to work one-on-one with your child to get them to those skills for the next level? You don't have to travel and you don't have to pay all this money to do it. I am wondering whether there is a parent's fee that the club coaches are receiving to go play in some of these tournaments. Again, anybody out there who knows this, who has been through this, and your conscience got to the point where you realize I couldn't do this anymore, I would love for you to email me or call me and tell me if this is the fact. Is there an appearance fee that the club coaches and or directors are receiving to take their kids? So i.e., I run blank and blank coach. If I bring my kid to the tournament in Long Island, do I get paid a $5,000 appearance fee, which is basically a kickback. It's payola for bringing my kids to play there. You called me and you asked me, so I'm going to give you my opinion. From everything I've learned about your daughter, if you just invested in the individual training, she has enough on-field experience that when she steps on the field next year in high school, she'll be fine. When she steps on the college field 2 years from now, she'll be fine. I think she's probably picking up more bad habits of playing in these club tournaments. I don't see it as an investment. I see it as a father who wants to do the best for his daughter that he can. A man who loves his daughter, wants the best for his daughter, wants every door and opportunity open. But I also think that you are like a lot of parents, that a lot of what's being done is because that's what people have done before me or around me. I would ask that you go online to fcalacrosse.com and have your daughter try out for their elite team. fcalacrosse.com is run by people with my level of skill who are coaches that volunteer because it's a ministry. Obviously, you're making a commitment to be involved in a Christian organization, but I can tell you, as one of the original founders of FCA Lacrosse, there is no financial incentive involved. The fee structure is going to be less than half to what you're talking about, and you will have the a la carte opportunity to play, and you'll be getting both great lacrosse skill and great character skill that your daughter would need. Because how can I be Bernie's financial advisor? I would take this money, I'd invest it in mutual funds, and then I would invest the rest in the personal coaching that she's getting at $100. That's a much better investment than $2K times 6. And on top of that, all right, then you got the private school tuition and you're missing a day of work. There's so many reasons why I think you need to investigate a different option. And one of them would be the FCA or a club, and you pick 3 that are within 2 hours. It is not sustainable to me. And I don't think the quality of lacrosse she's getting in those venues is worth the investment.
I appreciate your advice. I asked for your advice. I think not only will I be better for your advice, but as will my daughter. The gist of what you're saying, and I am going to do what you're saying because not only does it make sense, but it would be more beneficial.
I think more beneficial for your daughter and more beneficial for you, because the bottom line is, as I wrote down these numbers, is the numbers don't lie. The amount of money that's being invested in allowing this child to go on and have a great academic and athletic career in college, the numbers need to change. They're not sustainable. I think you want your daughter ultimately, because as you said correctly, there are very few colleges offering full scholarships. So even if your daughter were in that situation, you want her, the bottom line is to get out of college with a degree and a marketable skill and with no debt. No student loans, no debt. That would be the thing I would want for your daughter. If you were to get a good financial planner, again, if you go to DaveRamsey.com, they have a bunch of recommended and financial planners, and you can find one in your area. If you were to sit down, man, I'm telling you, these numbers you're telling me, she would have a ton of money and she'd have great skills to go to college with. And that's ultimately what I want. And I hope parents are listening to my heart and they're listening to your heart. We want the best for your child, but the question is strategy-wise, because most of the lacrosse community, I say the sports community, because you're right when you talk about AAU basketball. I've heard similar conversations. Most of us out here are like wildebeests, and we're just following along with the herd and running off the end of the cliff financially, and when nobody's stopping to really think. Fortunately, at this point, and I had another father the same way. I mean, this guy for a living does a lot of stuff that I'm talking about. But yet, when the emotion of your child gets involved, it's like what happens when there's a death in the family. It's like what happens when you're planning a wedding. When emotions get involved, oh my God, the math goes out the window. That's a wrap for this show. Thanks for listening. To hear more content like it, go to fredopie.com. This show could have been brought to you by your company. If you have questions about advertising and sponsoring this show, contact us at fdopie@gmail.com. That's fdopie@gmail.com. If you're interested as an audio mixer or in sales and marketing, send us a note with the subject header, Fred is hiring, to fdopie@gmail.com. Start with a gift. Learn how to understand your gift, monetize it, and serve others with it. I wrote it for the younger version of me, who I describe as having sports on the brain and lots of pain. It'll be available online at fredopie.com.